Today we are presenting Location and Transportation Credit 8, titled Green Vehicles. This lead credit is in the Location and Transportation, abbreviated LT, category. The name of this specific credit within the category is Green Vehicles. The LT Credit 8 is worth 1 point to the overall score of the project. There are two requirements to achieve this credit. The first requirement is mandatory, and the second requirement has two different options that the builder may choose between. The first requirement is to designate 5% of all parking spaces as preferred parking for green vehicles. All parking spaces include any new and existing off-street parking spaces leased or owned by the project. This includes all parking allocated to the project that is outside the project boundary. These spots must be clearly identified. A common way of permanent identification used is shown on the right. Simply a sign stating that the space is designated for green vehicles will suffice. The spots must also be enforced to ensure the proper vehicles are receiving benefit from the designated spots. For a vehicle to be considered for a preferred parking spot, it must have a minimum green score of 45. These scores are determined by an outside agency and can be achieved by a car such as a Toyota RAV4. The spots must also be dispersed throughout the lot. For example, they cannot all be right in front of the lot. In lieu of the preferred parking spaces, it is acceptable to give a 20% discounted parking rate for the preferred vehicles as long as the discounted rate is advertised and not limited to a specific number. The second requirement is that 2% of all vehicle spaces must be alternative fueling stations. With alternative fueling stations, the builder is given two options. The two options are electrical vehicle charging or liquid gas or battery facilities. To fulfill the requirement for option 1, the chargers must have level 2 charging capacity, meet all connector standards that govern the location of the project, and be networked to promote off-peak charging. A common alternative fueling station used are Tesla charging stations, which are shown to the right. Option 2 requires there be a liquid gas or battery switching station that at the minimum refuels the vehicle. Builders often need help when deciding which option to incorporate, so there are some effective ways to help the builder decide. There are many factors that can play a role in determining the type of alternative fueling station used on a project. The first place to start would be with reviewing local codes and standards. This is the first place because if the code does not allow for one of the two options, then the decision will become very easy. The builder may find it beneficial to survey future occupants of the structure and determine which type has a higher demand. It is more beneficial for the LEED program if the occupants use the features the builder is employing. The builder may want to compare the cost and complexity of incorporating each type. If one option is not financially feasible, it may be the deciding factor. The builder and owner should understand the safety and maintenance requirements associated with each option since it is a long-term addition and the owner will be the one maintaining it. This credit requires an additional oversight component. This credit requires that the end user of the builder actively monitor the parking situation for proper compliance with the program. The owner is required to have a program in place that ensures effective use of preferred and alternative fuel and parking spaces. To aid in this, each spot must have clear and permanent signage. This must indicate what type of vehicle is allowed to use the spot. The alternative fueling spots must clearly indicate what type of fueling station it is. If the builder chose to use electric vehicle charging stations, a sign like the one shown to the right would fulfill the requirement. If the builder decides to use a discounted rate instead of preferred parking spaces, the promotion must be posted at the entrance and not be limited. When working on a LEED project, proper documentation to receive the points for the work is crucial. This image lays out the documentation necessary for both option 1, electrical vehicle charging stations, and option 2, liquid gas or battery switching stations of the second requirement. For both option 1 and option 2, you must submit a parking plan indicating the location of preferred parking spaces and alternative fueling stations, as well as the calculations done for spaces required based on the total parking capacity. For both options, images of the preferred parking space permanent signage must be submitted. Both option 1 and option 2 also require proof of communication of discounted parking rate for green vehicles if used in lieu of preferred parking spaces. Electric vehicle charging stations require proof of permanent signage and proof of compliance with all relevant standards for electrical connectors. If using option 2, you must provide documentation of manufacturer specs for fuel type and refueling rate. All of these documents must be submitted to ensure the award of the point for LT Credit 8.
Green spaces examples. This image shows a proportionate distribution of preferred parking spaces. The dark gray area on the left side of the lot is designated for short-term parking. It has a total of 36 spaces, and 2 of those are preferred parking spaces for green vehicles. Those 2 spots account for 5% of the short-term parking area. The rest of the lot area is for long-term parking. There are a total of 72 spaces, and 4 of those are preferred parking spaces for green vehicles. Again, those 4 spots out of the 72 account for 5% of the long-term parking area. As we can see from the image, all of the green vehicle parking spaces are near the main entrance of the building. This is part of the incentive by the LEED system to reward superior parking spaces, incentivizing residents to use green vehicles. The overall lot has 108 spaces, and there are a total of 6 green vehicle spaces, accounting for 5% of the total lot capacity as required. Example number 2. This is another example of a parking lot that fulfills the LEED requirements. The lot has a total of 335 spaces. We can observe the 17 spots that are in dark green on the northern area of the lot close to the main entrance. These spots have preferred location and account for 5% minimum of preferred parking spaces that are required. The 7 spots that are shaded with a lighter green are plug-in spaces, meaning they are alternative fueling stations for green vehicles. The 7 spots out of the total of 337 spaces of the whole lot account for 2% of the spaces, which is the required minimum of fueling stations a parking lot must have to meet the LEED standards. Furthermore, we can see how the preferred spots and fueling stations are spread out throughout the lot, which is also another requirement. Intent. With every LEED credit, there is a purpose behind its development. The intent of this credit is to reduce pollution by promoting alternatives to conventionally fueled vehicles. Automobiles contributed 27% of greenhouse gases in 2010. If the LEED design works as thought, they should be able to aid in reducing that number by at least 2%, as more and more buildings are constructed using these standards. LEED aims to develop the environment, which includes the people living in it. Vehicle emissions have adverse effects on not only the climate, but children, workers who are exposed to bus and delivery truck emissions. LEED also aims to reward local governments and infrastructure for incentivizing the purchase of green vehicles. Building occupants will have another reason to take advantage of incentives from the government. Greater sustainability concept. LEED believes that by making preferred and alternative fuel parking spaces a requirement in building plans, it would further encourage individuals to take advantage of incentives offered to them for driving green vehicles. Individuals will receive more benefits than ever before for driving a green vehicle. These benefits include preferred parking, discounted parking rates, and refueling stations at their parking space. LEED believes in a future where green vehicles are available and more prevalent than conventional ones. They want to help change consumer minds about green vehicles and slowly change the idea of not only greener building, but also greener thinking by the individual. Changes from LEED 2009. The changes made from 2009 reflect the organization's drive to increase the minimum requirements. The first major change was that all projects must now include both preferred and alternative fuel parking. This is a good increase in requirements because a lot of green vehicles are running off of sources other than gasoline. This allows these people to have a place to charge or refuel at a place they frequently visit. Raising the minimum green score for preferred parking to 45 was also good. This allows for a car to be more efficient than before to receive preferred parking for green vehicle benefits. This also closes the gap between low emission producing vehicles and no emission producing vehicles. The requirement for alternative fuel spots was reduced to 2%. This may seem like a decrease in minimum requirements, but due to the need of both preferred and alternative fuel parking, it actually increased the overall percentage of parking spaces required to be preferred or alternative from 2009. By making electrical connectors comply with safety regulations and be able to interact dynamically, LEED is reducing the amount of electrical problems as well as reducing natural resource consumption due to the promotion of off-peak charging due to the dynamic capability. The credit can also no longer be earned by providing a car sharing program or green vehicles for the occupants to use. This helps to promote long-term commitment to sustainability by the individual and not just the owner. The individual will not have to purchase their own green vehicles, thus committing to sustainability. At the end of the day, sustainability is still a personal choice. Each individual makes with their lifestyle choices. The Builder and LEED program can incentivize and promote the usage of green vehicles by offering preferred parking spaces for users as much as they like. The individual still has the decision whether he wants to drive one of those vehicles or a less sustainable one. The individual still has the buying power, and a lot of people do not see the need to make an investment with the low gasoline prices and their trust in conventional powered vehicles. Conclusion. All in all, this is a pretty easy point to achieve with proper planning during the design phase and proper management during the operations phase. During the design phase, the builder must ensure that 5% of the total parking spaces are reserved for green vehicles, and then 2% of the parking spaces can be fitted with alternative fueling stations. In the operations phase, the owner must ensure proper use of the parking spaces and that signage is maintained for each preferred or alternative fueling parking spot. LEED believes that by not only promoting and incentivizing green vehicles, but by slowly adjusting the required preferred and alternative fueling stations, it will promote individuals to switch to greener vehicles, as well as promote builders to see the value of these changes when designing in the future. Thank you.